Hi everyone, this is Ira Wolf, Success Performance Solutions. Very grateful and excited that you chose to be here today for the first of our four-part series. The overall topic is the workforce ahead, the future of employment or the future of employability. Today's session is going to focus on expect the unexpected. My guest for these four webinars is Dr. Ed Gordon. He's the author of 20 books, a labor economist, and just an overall good guy. He knows more about labor and jobs than anyone that I know. Today's event and the other webinars will be sponsored by Success Performance Solutions. That's my company. I hope you'll go up to the website and take a look. You can go to successperformancesolutions.com and hopefully you'll take a look around. And finally, there are quite a few free resources that I've made available. They range from white papers to books to videos to podcasts, online learning, you name it, it's there. I've created a webpage. It's at bit.ly/free resources 2020. Welcome everybody. Appreciate you all being here. We had a great response. So obviously must be you, Ed, that everybody wants to hear. We're here to talk about the future of employment, the future of jobs. I know no one better off to have this conversation. I've said this earlier on another interview that I was at, explaining who you were. And I said, you've been waiting for this moment for 30 years, Ed. I've been doing research and studying and talking about what the future was going to look like, future jobs. I met you, just a little bit of background. I met Ed. I was writing about the perfect labor storm 20 years ago, and Ed was certainly ahead of me on this, but writing a few books, and somehow our paths crossed. We actually never met one another. This is the closest we've come to meeting one another, but we've had a lot of phone conversations, and then more recently we've had some video interviews. We did a live stream a few weeks ago with Ed, and now we're here, and so great opportunity. But Ed, you've been preparing for this moment for a long time, and I know you've got 30 years or more, or at least 20 years of solid research on the subject. Ed's a labor economist. He's an author, as I said, 20 some books, and he's certainly published a lot of white papers, and he's a historian. His last book had nothing to do with really work. It was more on, again, he's a history buff as well, but really pleased to have you, Ed, here.
Thank you.
We've got a lot to share, so we're lot to share. So I don't want to waste any more time. We're going to get into that. Just a reminder for everybody, if you want to put in where you're calling from in the chat, if you have any specific question you want to address, if there's something we miss, we need to follow up on, we will be monitoring the chat throughout the day, throughout the next 50 minutes or so. So Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you, and welcome.
Well, welcome to the first part of the Workforce Road Ahead. And today we're dealing with something that none of us expected. You know, the COVID-19 emergency is unprecedented in modern history, certainly in the lives of all of us. This is a major crossroads in history, and it is accelerating trends that were already underway and is going to produce tremendous changes across American society, not only for this decade, but I think for decades afterwards. You know, none of us really know exactly what is going to happen. And I don't have a crystal ball either, folks. However, being a historian and economist, I can tell you what we see happening is that the COVID pandemic is combining with other issues, and it is going to push forward systemic change. So first of all, let's just look at unemployment. Unemployment, as we all know, has been historically very, very low. However, there have been large numbers of individuals who had quit looking for jobs. And before the pandemic actually hit, we had over, as far as Imperial Consulting was concerned, there were over 10 million vacant jobs across the United States. And the majority of those were good jobs. They were higher skilled jobs and medium skilled jobs. Well, now the pandemic has hit. We have over 36 million Americans who suddenly are unemployed and have applied for benefits, the greatest number since the Great Depression. Now, most of them have been furloughed. and most of them will return to work after this epidemic, plague, whatever you want to call it, ends. The Labor Department says last month that there were over 14% of the workforce was unemployed. We think that a more accurate picture is a figure of over 18%. And the longer these workers remain unemployed, the more employers are going to have to reskill them because their skills will become eroded. Well, right now, the workforce is about 156 million people across the United States. Over the next 8 years, it will grow to 171 million. However, the participation rate, the number of people actually working, which is now over 62.7%, will decline to a little over 61%. And the reason for this is, of course, the huge numbers, 50 million Americans retiring, but also, we also predict that many Americans are now undereducated for the fourth industrial revolution that we're now in the midst of, which we'll be talking about in subsequent programs. Some jobs, though, actually have posted some increases. Well, we certainly can look at all the healthcare areas, such as nursing, physicians, internists, psychiatrists, but believe it or not, we have other things such as interpreters and translators and manual laborers and warehouse stockers. Many people have left the restaurant industry and airlines to work in hospitals or in warehouses. Then we have a tremendous decline in the area of travel and retail and light truck delivery people, customer service representatives. Well, we can expect over the next 10 years, tremendous growth in certain areas. One will continue to be healthcare. We have millions of healthcare workers who are now or about to retire in this decade. But the numbers of people in areas of AI, other technologies, the areas of personal financial counseling, even education and training, we're going to see a tremendous uptick and surge in new jobs. Well, what other trends has the COVID crisis brought on? First of all, the merger and acquisition trends that have been going on now for quite some time are going to be very muted. Inflation, or I should say deflation, is now a major possibility in major economies. As the Japanese suffered in the 1990s, we may begin to suffer deflation. But later on, inflation in a year or two could be a major factor, mainly because of the $17 trillion in worldwide debt that has been poured in by major governments to prevent a worldwide depression. The question is, can we grow the US economy faster to pay off that debt? We're going to talk about that in just a minute, what it's going to require. We also can tell you that automation now will be accelerated. KPMG recently surveyed businesses across America, and 40% of them have said that they're going to increase automation very soon. Jobs will become more complex. Why? Well, robotics, AI, they still need human thinking skills to invent, to program, to manufacture, to repair, and to properly utilize to increase productivity all of these inventions. The results? Workers are going to require improved general education and specialized career skills from post-secondary training, whether they're just coming out of high school or they're already employed. And the majority of workers will need continuing education to remain employed and to remain productive with their employees, or employers, I should say. Now, this presents major needs for structural changes to delivery systems across the economy. They have been long overdue and have been prevented by a focus on short-termism and other issues. We now think that they're going to be pushed forward in order to grow the economy and increase productivity in order to avoid a major economic downturn. Supply and demand of available workers is going to radically change in this economy, such as offshoring and globalization. Offshoring will slow, it already has. Globalization has taken some major hits around the world from many nations, and inshoring has sped up for many reasons. One of which is the low-cost advantage of countries in Asia has been eliminated, and right now the United States is bringing more production closer to markets, reducing transportation costs, improving quality, and avoiding political issues, such as the corruption problems that exist in other countries that have proved to be very expensive to many employers. The other issue are regional education to employment talent delivery systems. Right now, we'll introduce that topic because we'll talk about this extensively in the future, but largely the system we have now, which was invented 100 years ago, is really geared to a 1970 economy before the major event of taking computerization and technology out of computer centers and putting them in PCs and now other equipment and spreading them all across businesses and production facilities. So these systems largely are antiquated and are now underproducing the high quality educated workers that we need throughout all areas of the economy. One example of a major change is a earn and learn program. Here's an unprecedented effort by companies in Wisconsin. Lindquist Machine Corporation is one of them, and other companies, where they're combining learning in local technical and community colleges, plus actually hands-on paid learning on the job in order to have the electromechanical technologies, welding, and machining positions filled. As I noted when we started a few moments ago, we have many jobs that have remained unfilled, and a growing number of technical jobs across all business sectors, simply because we don't have the talent to fill it. So the top priority, what is the top priority? According to the Conference Board and Korn Ferry, the number one issue that leading executives around the world has said, and particularly in the United States, is attracting talent and developing talent and more innovation in order to raise productivity within businesses. Companies are having a harder and harder time matching the jobs to the available workforce. We have to fix the skills mismatch. Many of you, at least I hope many of you, had read many of my prior books, from Skill Wars to the 2010 Meltdown, Winning the Global Talent Showdown, and now Future Jobs. And these books detailed for all of you how this problem has gradually been building. In fact, the first book I wrote about this was in 1991, entitled Closing the Literacy Gap in American Business. Well, now the issue is not literacy. American workers are literate. The issue now is the level of education development that they've received, elementary, secondary, and then post-secondary. So what we see happening is the COVID-19 has raised the urgency of this misalignment. And we see now regional efforts that have been underway for at least the last 20 years across the US under many local brand names, aligning businesses, school systems, and within communities, local government, economic development, workforce boards, and nonprofits. And they have been working in an attempt to better prepare more American workers for this new world of work and produce innovations as well as traditional skills. So coming into this overview is important. I think many of you have heard these things before or bits and pieces of this. The COVID epidemic that we now have has increased the urgency and is now very strongly given a reason that we need to pay to this skills mismatch. How many people in New York City, when the pandemic hit and the resources were not there of healthcare personnel, died because the nurses, the doctors, the lab techs were not available to properly diagnose and care for these individuals? Right now, the COVID-19 pandemic, if this were a baseball game, we're in about the second inning. There are going to be many peaks and valleys, I'm afraid, and the shortage of healthcare workers, where the hot spots develop, will be seen again and again. And the question is, what can we do, not just in healthcare, but in all these other areas to avoid not the world ending in a big bang, but in a meltdown, as we simply lack the necessary trained workers in many fields, not just the professionals, but the service workers, because now these are blending together. Both the service people and the professionals need more education in order to do their jobs properly. In subsequent programs, we'll do a little bit more in-depth on that particular issue, but I need to introduce this now because the COVID-19 is finally bringing this issue to the fore. It's ugly. It's been festering for years. Many companies talk to me about it, but they don't want to touch it because we don't want to rock the boat. Systemically, it's set. A third of the population will get a really great education. Another third will get something. The bottom third, don't worry about it. We need 2/3 or more of our current population now in the workforce to be at the level that the fourth industrial revolution demands. And we'll talk about the global nature of this. This is not an American problem. This is a global problem because now our technology has basically outraced the educational systems worldwide to deal with it. I'll repeat that. Our technology in the fourth industrial revolution has basically outraced the educational systems worldwide to deal with it. And the willingness of our culture, business, government, parents, and educators to face the fact that this is a new world. This is a new world order. We invented the technology. If we're going to use it, we have to have the people that can properly manage it and use it and build it and design it and maintain it. Think back to 1900, where most people were on the farms, to 1920, when most Americans then lived in cities. That was a revolution. We invented the current educational system to deal with it. We broadened it somewhat during the 20th century. By 1970, we had the best educated workforce in the entire world. Then things began to change as we continued to upgrade. It was Bill Gates who did this to us. Isn't it terrible? He had to spread those PCs all over the world. Well, it's happened and it's continuing to grow. The chip is getting more and more powerful. But I don't see a data from Star Trek appearing in your office anytime, which means that technology is wonderful when it works, but it takes a thinking mind to use it. You just can't press a button. So those are some of the issues that we look right now some of this is unexpected because people have avoided thinking about it or talking about it. My kids are all right. Our local school, elementary and secondary, they're great and wonderful. There is no problem. That's simply not true, because what we see now is employers are having a harder and harder time, not just employing individuals coming out of high school, but even individuals coming out of our four-year institutions who cannot properly communicate in writing or oral communication, who lack interpersonal skills, who sometimes, many often lack even the math skills needed in order to do the work. So those are some of the issues that I wanted to introduce today. And I think now we have plenty of time for a chat and some questions. So Ira?
I'm going to come back online here,
right.
and appreciate that, Ed. So there's
right.
a number of things that I know, and you didn't say this, so I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to screw up the statistics, but I think this was 10 years ago. It's early on. I've quoted it many, many times.
Yes.
But you were saying that we would have at some point, and you and I and a lot of other people were not predicting the pandemic. We knew it was possible, but what we were suggesting is that the technology and just change would require individuals have a different set of skills, a more advanced set of skills. But you predicted at one time that there was going to be 150 million people, kind of frontline workers, lower skilled workers, competing for maybe 40 to 50 million jobs. Am I correct in that number?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And I'll be updating those numbers in the white paper that we'll be publishing later this year. Okay. And the issue is, it's not a question of just low skilled people that have dropped out or graduate from high school reading at the 8th grade level, and we have plenty of those. It's also individuals who have graduated, maybe had some college, didn't finish, don't have a certificate or a degree, they have work experience, they've had good jobs for a long time, and now automation has come along and replaced their jobs, not just low-skill jobs, but now medium-level skill jobs. And those jobs have been replaced with other more sophisticated jobs that require higher level problem solving and thinking skills. The difficulty is we have many individuals who simply don't have those skills, those aptitudes. Can they be developed? Yes. Yes. Are we doing it? No. When I founded a training and development business in 1979 in Chicago. We did customized training, mainly in Chicago, but across the country. That grew in the 80s as computerization started and companies set up training departments, corporate universities. We helped set up corporate universities. Then we saw by the middle 90s, short-termism took over. And now everything could be done online. You don't need a classroom. You don't need blended learning. It can all be done remotely. Sorry, but I can tell you now as a learning theorist, someone who taught at different universities and spent a great deal of time studying the uses of e-learning and blended learning, I can tell you that in most cases, blended learning far outdistances just pure e-learning, mainly because most people do not have the patience, the motivation, the drive to finish programs. And then it's a question not just of finishing a program, but what degree of learning results after it is over. And the studies show increasingly that in most cases, not all, the degree of learning would be far greater if it was blended. And companies have eliminated those programs, particularly when we had the economic crisis in 2008. But even before then, it had been seriously eroded. And then companies started building it back. Unfortunately, within the last 2 years, we now see last year that companies cut back their training again by 5%. Even though they have millions of unfilled jobs, they have eliminated, most, not all, have eliminated entry-level job training and training and updates for their workers. And that's costing them, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, an unfilled job costs the company $26,000 a year in lost productivity and profit on average, not averaging all these positions. So we're looking at a loss last year of somewhere around $300 billion. I will have more to say about this later, and in the white paper that we're working on now, the 2030 Jobs Pandemic, which will come out probably in early next year after the election and the pandemic, I hope, has been brought under control.
Right. So let me go back to that statistic that I said. And again, it was somewhere, it was pretty astonishing that there'd be, and again, I've been referencing you for more than a decade, that there was going to be about 40 million people applying for, 150 million people applying for about 40 million jobs. The reverse of that is that as we, even the most basic level skills, even those frontline skills or jobs required better skills, even minimal digital skills. So every job required a more advanced skill. I think the ratio was something like 50 million people would be applying for 120 some million jobs. So you know, if you look at where we are now, before the recession, we had 160 million jobs approximately. And
right.
Out of that, you know, 40 million, you were basically predicting that about 40 million of those jobs, after all is said and done, would be lower skilled jobs, and 120 million would be at least more advanced skilled jobs. But the ratio of people applying was going to reverse. And overnight, you know, we thought this would be an evolution, and everybody hoped it would be a slow evolution, and we'd have time and we didn't have to do the training, and next year we'll put it into our budget, and all of a sudden, overnight, right, everybody's home. I can't tell you how many times in the last, well, I could tell you in the last 5 years that I had less, I can count on one hand the number of requests I had, or contacts, leads on my website, which we do pre-employment testing. How many people requested digital literacy skills? No one. I mean, people wanted to know were they proficient at Word and Excel, and could they type and data entry, but it mostly was people felt pretty good at screening out the people who had no skills, but they wanted to know, you know, how quickly can people do it, or how advanced they were in Word and Excel and things. All of a sudden, I'm getting a request or two a day from companies that are saying, we need to test our employees for digital literacy. And I always ask them what that means. And they're talking some very, very basic skills. Mm-hmm. And I think overnight, what your prediction was where we were headed came true. And that's why we're here. So there are a couple questions here. Yes. Ed, I know we want to make this real for people because they're struggling. So some are in small business, some may be nonprofits, some may be with NGOs, some may be with government. So I know we got a really, really diverse group of people here. And some of you may just be kind of interested listeners. What are some of the things, let's first tackle the employer. You know, what are some of the things that an employer can do? And then, but I know you've been promoting your retain, and I want you to talk a little bit about that. Is that certainly going to be a theme on all the sessions going forward, and whether people participate in them or not? I mean, it's certainly going to be the one way to get out of that. So let's first address the employer issue. What are some things companies should be doing, an employer should be doing right now, small or large? And since most of our businesses are small, and those are certainly the ones that are struggling, what can they do right now to help upskill or reskill their employees?
One of the strategies that I see at work in communities across the United States is the collaboration by small employers through a regional organization that they belong to. I call them a retain, a Regional Talent Innovation Network. This is a nonprofit that's set up as an alliance between business and communities in order to help small and large and medium businesses to develop the talent in their community that does not exist to fill these vacant jobs, as well as to replace individuals who will be retiring, and also to work with the local economic development people to attract new business into a community. They work through both the higher education post-secondary programs, meaning two-year colleges, certificate programs, union apprenticeship programs, and four-year institutions. But they also set up information on careers in elementary and secondary schools. In elementary schools, it's mainly to help parents as well as students to be exposed to the wide range and world of jobs that exist in most communities. Now, not every community is going to become Silicon Valley. Not every community is going to be launching space shuttles. Not every community has huge major medical centers, granted. But every community does have specific business sectors that they want to support and expand, and they have physical advantages. They have potential universities, educational systems, transportation networks that might help them to attract new industry, a new business sector into their area if they had a workforce. What I've seen again and again is that companies now locate where they can find the talent, as well as some of these other factors of transportation. There's tax issues. There are other issues as well, but they need a pool of talent. So by educating parents and students starting in elementary school and telling them about what the jobs of the 21st century are and getting them interested, then these same businesses support Career Academy high schools that are a blend of liberal arts and specific classes and information that support those sectors. Could be the hospitality sector, the banking sector, automotive sector, IT, whatever it is in your community, which contributes mainly to your current and hopefully your future economic development.
So for,
Yes.
one of the concerns that I've got is
Yeah.
there's obviously a lot of businesses that are just scrambling. They're trying to figure out how
Right.
to open the doors. They've got people, they may even recognize the need that they need to upgrade their skills on a short-term basis. I mean, and again, I can give a simple solution. I know we offer an LMS, and we have 2,700 online courses. From as simple as how people can learn to use Word and Excel to can they lead and can they manage and communicate and build teams and manage projects. And again, they're short bursts. And so, getting people up to speed has changed a great deal. And again, many of that is literally $3 to $6 a month per person. So again, if you have 100, 200 employees, it adds up, but you can really localize that.
Yes.
So that's really important. Beyond saying, hey, just go up to Coursera or online or work with somebody like myself, what are some other immediate solutions that a company might do?
Well, the federal government a few years ago changed the National Workforce Employment Act so that companies could work with local workforce boards to help them fill their vacant jobs. And in many communities, though not all, the workforce board has the ability to take a look at the people unemployed in their area and take a look at the vacant jobs that exist and partner with a business to pay half of the cost of training someone into that job, and the government will pay the other half. This is a major step forward, simply because before only nonprofits and government agencies could utilize that type of an approach. So this is another area that companies can take advantage of. But again, I emphasize to all of you that short-term fixes here is not what we need. We need serious discussion of long-term availability of skilled workers. 50 million people will retire in this decade. The numbers of high school graduates who are entering the workforce or going into post-secondary education, who have advanced reading and math skills, meaning 12th grade or better, that most new jobs will require that pay well with benefits. Those numbers are limited. We'll talk more in depth about this in future programs that we're going to do here. But something has to be done at the local community level to change that perspective. That what worked in the past, we can muddle through again, Ed. We can do this. No, you won't be able to. You're going to lose advanced jobs, and the US could lose advanced technologies to other countries who develop a workforce that is capable of meeting the needs of those particular business sectors. We all can see how fast technology has advanced. That is not going to change. We can expect further advances as chips become more and more powerful. But it takes workers who can read, write, and have good interpersonal communication skills, as well as specialized career training in post-secondary that companies need to continue once they're hired. Because as things are changing so rapidly that the education system right now is just plain out of date. Not for everyone, but for the majority of our workers. And our companies are not picking up the slack. It is not a question that companies are the sole responsibility to bring employees up to speed. They aren't. Our society needs to do it, and our society is not doing it. This is not a political issue. This is a societal problem and a cultural problem. Because you see, we could and we can do a better job. We know how to train workers, and we certainly know how to better educate children in school if we have parental support, we have well-trained, dedicated teachers in math and science and reading, as well as we have principals who know how to manage their teachers well and are given the opportunity to individualize instruction within their school. But business still has a partnership with other nonprofit organizations that exist in order to continue that process. Lifelong learning is not just for the professional, the so-called professional. You know, if you're an auto technician today in a dealership, and you take your car into that technician needs a reading ability at the 16th grade level to read the schematics and manuals and computers in order to figure out why the damn computers in your car just don't work right and be able to problem solve with it. These aren't dummy jobs. The idea that service workers have inferior minds and carpenters and plumbers and bricklayers and electricians, they just don't need that much education. I have news for you. Those days are over. My father was a carpenter contractor for many years. And by the time he retired, when he was 80, he always said to me, Ed, it's amazing to me, the products that now are available that have come online in the last 20 years. This is a very complex need. And in electricity, our building just put in a new electrical conduit into this 100-year-old building. Very complex, very difficult. Those electricians have gone through extensive training and apprenticeship in order to get there. And those needs are going to continue. I talk to people in the unions and how much of their work now is going out and correcting the mistakes of other people who didn't have that training and education. And now they have to redo all of the electrical systems in buildings.
Well, the pandemic certainly laid bare, I mean, a lot of the things that we were talking about, but overnight laid bare a lot of the vulnerabilities and these skill gaps. And I think one is there may be one of the, if there's some silver linings in this, that we appreciate, a lot of people appreciate other people that we took for granted. That, even a computer tech, oh, he's just the geek and he doesn't have any of these skills. And all of a sudden people were forced to go home and figure out all this technology themselves. And the joke, for years, you and I have been around long enough when the VCR came out, and it used to be the joke that you needed your kids to, stop it from the flashing light. Well, there's still people that never moved beyond that because they didn't have to, but also literally overnight, because they'd go into work and somebody would handle that. Overnight, they were responsible for figuring out how to get online or how to get on a call like this or join that or deal with their bandwidth problems or get multiple people online at the same time.
Yes.
And there was nobody to turn to. You couldn't turn to anybody else. Maybe you can turn to your kids to help figure it out. But basically people were left on their own. So overnight, this minimum was left. And again, I know we're going to talk about in some of the other sessions about the education, how is that going to change? And almost every conversation leads up to what's going to happen with traditional colleges. I wrote a chapter in my book, which was about credentialing. What's going to be the basis of credentialing? How are people going to earn credentials? And what's going to be more important is that you have a number of degrees, or you took a recent certification, or what was your proficiency in something, rather than I completed 8 years of school and I have multiple degrees. So, I heard this on another webinar. I was sort of in between my sessions today, and they described the world we're living in right now is a facet. If you looked at a raw diamond, and it's all these facets, and they're all irregular, and as you turn it, you can see all the different facets. We're literally standing on one facet, except we have to connect the dots. We have to make them all work, because you just can't fix the one facet. You can't shine it up and make it, nice and clear and buff it up, and don't do anything with all the rest. And as soon as, the earth turns a little bit or rotates, now there's another facet that's the center of attention. So we're talking about education, we're talking about job skills, we're talking work, we're talking about jobs. And, you came up with the title, I think, that you sent me was Future of Employment. So, a lot of it's focused on the future of jobs. But the problem isn't going to be creating jobs. There's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be out there. It's going to be, how do we get people employed? And I think beyond that, what I did a twist on it was the future of employability. Is everybody's going to have to carry this cachet, this portfolio around the skills, and those are going to can be in flux. And the more skills you have and the more advanced they are, is really what's going to be your credentials. And therefore, that tradesperson, what that frontline person and the person working behind the bakery, the bakery cases, they're basically going to have better skills, and the more skills they have, the better and more secure the job's going to be.
Well, I have many stories to share with all of you over the next few sessions. But again, this is something that I believe, and our research shows, that is going to be solved first regionally. It is not going to be solved by the government by itself, funneling trillions of dollars into training programs. It's going to, and no one company, even the huge giants by themselves, cannot solve this problem. It is going to take collaboration between people who would be pointing at each other as the culprit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the educators, it's the parents, it's the business people, it's the politicians. I have seen these regional talent innovation systems, whether they're called the Vermilion Advantage, the New North, High School Inc. There are 1,000 of them across the United States. Some are well supported by business and their communities. Others are languishing and struggling to get more support.
Are you familiar? Judy, I put a question in here. Are you aware of the Southwire Mentor Internship Program?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'd like to be.
Yeah.
Judy,
if you're available,
yes.
If you want to talk a little bit and share a little bit about that, just put it in the chat that you're okay, and I'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. if you want to do that, because that was something else, and I'd like to get Ed's input and hear a little bit more about it. So,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Southwire is using the German methodology in that they actually start in elementary school by doing school tours and stuff like that. And they work in conjunction with the elementary and the middle school schools in the area. And they have paid internships in high school where the kids can learn different skills to work in their company, in their plants. They're one of the largest wire producers in the world. And they are located in Carrollton, Georgia. But it's one of the most sophisticated mentorship and internship programs that I've ever heard of. And it goes all the way through the colleges. They even have partnerships with West Georgia College, West Georgia University, and also some of the technical schools. And they go into the schools and they teach too. But it's a phenomenal program. And they have a huge retention because of it. Because a lot of kids think that if you're going to go to work for a manufacturing company, it's going to be a dirty job. And what their big thing, how it all got started, was to show kids that manufacturing wasn't dirty anymore.
It's technology. Yeah, I mean, manufacturing.
It's all technology. Yep, it's all technology.
Yeah, we're not talking foundries.
Right.
Right. Well, Judy, I'd like to learn more about that program. And if you will contact me, email me at imperialcorp@juno.com, or go on our website, just imperialcorp.com. And certainly you're free to call me in Chicago at 312-664-5196. And that's true for all of you who are listening.
Can you give me the last numbers again?
312-664-5196.
Okay, I can send you the information for the person that heads up their workforce development stuff.
Very good. Thank you, Judy.
Okay.
Thanks, Judy. And I'm just putting that into, let me see, I guess I need my glasses on here, way too small. In there, uno.com. So there's Ed's information. That's out there. So I have it in the chat. I think that was right. Maybe Elaine or you can check that, Ed. There's a couple other things here, and I know you have a couple of your clients or people that are familiar with you in the retain work. So somebody chimed in, but there was George answered a question earlier, and I think maybe this will be we have a couple minutes here, maybe a closing side, is how do you bring the groups together? I mean, and I understand you've got retain, and so conceptually you got the structure, you got the business model. But how does the conversation start like that? Because I've been, for 25 years, prior in this career, I've been in this world, and I've been, involved with workforce development, and I've involved with the chamber and economic development and workforce development, and there's lots of fits and starts to these conversations. So let me ask you, what have you found successful to bring the people together and then make it effective? Because there are so many of these groups that came together and get mired down in bureaucracy, so much territorial. So, in maybe 2 or 3 minutes, can you share your lessons of how can you move through this quickly?
I'm going to go through this in greater depth in another segment of these programs. But I can tell you what I have found over the last 20 years writing about this and consulting on it, is that groups will contact me who either have a program that is underfunded and underappreciated within their region, or they're interested in starting it. It could be through a chamber of commerce. It could be through a workforce board. It could be through a Goodwill Industries or some other nonprofit community service group. and they see the need to get people to come together. And the reason they're usually doing this is young people are leaving the community and going elsewhere. Small businesses are closing, and the tax base in their region is declining, and they want to turn it around. And they see the house is on fire. So many times with this, they'll do a regional summit where the awareness of this problem is brought to the fore for all the community leaders, people across the community. And they are given the awareness that this is not a problem just here in Ohio or in Montana or in New York State or California or wherever they live, but this is a problem all over the entire United States. And it's a global problem. And other communities already are addressing it. So what we've done is, first, we make them aware. We show them how other communities have set up a local brand, a nonprofit, that does not attempt to duplicate what's already there, but tries to get people to work together. And there's the key. Then we work with that group to learn how to collaborate, to get the people to talk to each other in a language that they all can understand, not a business language or an education language or a political language, but to translate what they need in a way that they can form a common vision for their community. These are Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives. These are people in trade. These are people in healthcare, etc., so that the community can put together, again, a more comprehensive, updated way to educate people for the variety of jobs that need to be filled in their community. Not just one company with a big program. So all the healthcare, everyone should go into healthcare. No, everyone should go into manufacturing. No, everyone should go into IT. That's not the issue, because children have different skills and needs and issues, as do adults. So it's a collaborative effort to help the small, medium, and bigger businesses to fill a variety of jobs. And once they have a vision, where do they start? They can't do everything at once. It takes time to set this up and also to come up with the funding, because businesses have to put their money where their mouth is. They can't just complain. They cannot find talent and skilled people, and yet, on the other hand, do nothing about it. And then on the other side of the coin, the public and private school systems also need to work with them to better rearrange their curriculums and educational programs to produce the talent at the other end of the pipeline. It's a pipeline problem.
Right.
Same thing with the higher education institutions. We're talking about, again, we're talking about significant systemic change.
Right. So Ed, I'm going to put you, I'm going to volunteer you for something, because I know we're getting pretty quick to run out of time here. We've
right.
You know, we really appreciate everybody spending an hour with us today. If anybody's interested, I mean, one of the aspects of awareness is sometimes having somebody like Ed or myself, you know, or somebody in our network present to a local group. And now you can do this virtually, and basically being able to, you know, say, here are the facts. These aren't trends. This isn't the future anymore. The future is now. You know, it's arrived overnight. And, you know, here is why you need to do it. And here's the first steps, and sort of accelerate that conversation of why it needs to be done, and that there are ways to do it. And certainly the retain model is, you know, Ed's been working on this for years, and a lot of success stories. And then, as Judy said, even something like Southwire. But again, it's been done in manufacturing. It's been done in certain areas, but this could be universal. And it needs.
I see here that Andiana talked about the great uncoupling and how society is falling behind. Right. I'd love to talk to you about that, Andiana. Please give me a call. I'm aware of this. And The retains basically are trying to do what, to recouple people within societies and get them out of their silos.
Again, I want to thank Ed. That was a great presentation, Ed. I've been getting texts and comments and other things on the
Thank
side
you,
here,
everyone.
outside
Thank
of this, that everybody was, very, really enjoyed it a lot.
Well, then you're looking for part 2, the failure of current talent strategies. That's what we'll be doing in June. We'll talk about why, the ways in which we have found our talent and filled jobs, what's happened to it, what the 4th Industrial Revolution has done, and we're going to talk about demographics, worldwide demographics.
Right. And I think you can see that here on this. Hopefully, you can see that on the screen. Here's the dates, and in the chat, I did put the link here. You can see that it's bit.ly/jobs2030-2, which is -2s for the second version of this. So if you click on that now, you'll have the event, but I'll also send that to you in an email, in a follow-up email to this with some of the other information and Ed's information. But I appreciate everybody taking the time. And then one final thing, again, I put up a lot of resources for you here. There are a number of things related to trust in the workplace, building a culture of trust. Also remote, there's a blueprint, there's a free download book on remote work blueprint there. So you can go to bit.ly free resources 2020. I'll put that in the email that goes out. But again, we had a really nice attendance today. Spread the word, tell your friends, your colleagues. Hopefully you'll be back in July or in June over this.
Yes.
But if you want to register now and get ensure you got a spot, because we do have a limited spot on the Zoom, you use that bit.ly/jobs2030-2. It's in the chat, and I'll keep it open for a little bit so everybody can catch that. Again, thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate it. It's great working with you. It took us 20 years that you and I can figure out how to do a really solid collaboration, and I think this is it. The timing's good. We've been working together for a long time to make this happen, and this is our moment. So, appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Please let us know, communicate with us. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, a lot more than Ed is. If you have any questions, comments, follow through, recommendations for future, you want us to capture another topic, let us know. Until then, be safe, everybody. Keep distancing, take your precautions, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care.